Writing Out Loud, a program designed to explore in-depth interviews with writers to hear that words have voices.
Hello everyone, I'm Teresa Miller and welcome to Writing Out Loud. My very, very special guest today is writer, director, actor Tim Blake Nelson. I've been stalking you for years, Tim, and I finally got you on the show.
Oh, thank you for your persistence.
I'm looking at you for signs of Delmar, and I do not see any. Our beloved character from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Was it great fun for you to be able to play a character who's so different from the guy you are? I mean, you have a degree in the classics, for goodness sakes, and Delmar is, well, challenged.
Well, I had, like many people, most people who follow movies at all, been an admirer of Joel and Ethan Coen's since their first movie, Blood Simple, came out in 1985. When I was in college. And so when they offered me the role of Delmar, I was actually so excited and so humbled that I initially said, I'm not sure. I need to read the script again, just to make sure that I'm not going to arrive on set and disappoint you, because they hadn't auditioned me. They knew me already then and just offered me the role out of the blue. So I read it again overnight and experimented with maybe what I would do with it, and then of course had confidence in Joel's direction, and decided I would go ahead and say yes. So it was such an incredible surprise to be offered the role. It was so utterly unexpected that I guess I was halfway through filming it before I realized that I was actually doing it.
Well, you know, this film has more of an ensemble feel to it than any film I have seen in a number of years. Did you and the other actors just have this immediate chemistry?
We did. You know, a story that few know, which is true, is that Brad Pitt really wanted to play Delmar.
Really?
Yeah. And I think the studio even knew about this. And Joel and Ethan, who are powerful enough to be able to fend off such advances, even though they like Brad a lot and have subsequently worked with him, and he's a wonderful guy, but they were afraid that if they had Brad and George, that it might upset the balance of the ensemble that they were envisioning. And they really wanted to have the movie proliferated by 3 shots, which is why it's the first of their movies that's widescreen, because they wanted room for shots with all 3 characters. And they were afraid that if they cast Brad, that they would get into a situation in which they were doing lots of close-ups of George and Brad, and that it would contravene what they saw as you say, a movie about 3 guys instead of 1 guy. What's extraordinary about George, and I imagine this is true about Brad as well, whom I know a little bit, is that he's not the kind of actor who's yearning for his close-up. And so he's such a team player and such an utterly decent guy that he was willing to share the screen with John Turturro, of course, one of the great character actors in America, but also a complete unknown at the time. And there was never any issue with that for George. This is really pretty extraordinary.
Joel Coen directed the film, and you're a director yourself, an accomplished director. How hard is it for you as an actor to take direction from another director?
I love it. In fact, I crave it. When I act in somebody else's film, I really do everything I can to forget that I'm directing, other than the fact that I do watch great directors like Joel, and I just worked with a guy who was a completely different approach from Joel and Ethan, this director Brett Ratner, but also from whom I'm able to learn a great deal just by watching what he does. And so I do soak up what the director is doing because it helps me as a director. I never went to film school. But at the same time, as an actor, it's never going to be useful for me to be acting like a director or thinking like a director while I'm trying to play a scene with an acting partner. Because of course, your attention needs to be on what you want to do to the other person, what you want from them, what you want in the life of your character, and most importantly, what your scene partner is doing to you that's impactful. And that's how you find real moments that the camera can film and that will allow the director to make an interesting movie. So if you're in his head, that's not going to help you or him.
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou was loosely based on the Odyssey. You directed the movie O, which was loosely based on Shakespeare's Othello. Do you think taking these classic stories and putting them in a contemporary context makes them more accessible for people?
I think it makes them more accessible, but I think it's an overt admission of something that I believe to be utterly and manifestly true, and that is that as storytellers, we're really retelling narratives over and over again. They're new, but they're also retellings. And so I think that we can either dress up mythologies into modern stories, or biblical stories into modern stories, or narratives that have been told to entertain or scare children, or entertain or scare the tribe, or to teach others. Whatever stories, whatever the purpose of these narratives might be, we do retell them. And so the most interesting new movie, whether it's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or whether it's Joel and Ethan Cohen's A Serious Man. I mean, these are all, because they're part of a storytelling tradition, they're all, in a sense, refracted or retold stories that have occurred before.
Sure, sure.
And so when you base something, a new film or a play, on a classical text, you're really only foregrounding that. So, you know, when the opportunity came to make O, and I was told of it conceptually, a retelling of Othello in high school, I thought, well, there's these high school Shakespeare movies have just proliferated in the last few years.
Yeah.
There'd been 10 Things I Hate About You, based on Taming of the Shrew, and you know, just the year before, actually with the same actress, Julia Stiles, playing Kate, who was going to play Desdemona for us in Othello. And I thought, I really don't want to be a part of this. It's a dumbing down of Shakespeare. And even though I have this notion in my head about how stories are just retold over and over again, I don't want to be a part of this. But it also seemed to me that to set Othello, a Shakespearean tragedy, in high school in America, while there'd been this raft of high school shootings, was perhaps the most appropriate retelling of this. Not only did I feel it would work, but I thought there's no better place right now if you just want a cogent, powerful narrative that's going to actually make a difference than to transpose it into high school and show kids doing violence to one another in a Shakespearean tragedy. And so I suddenly found it irresistible.
The release of this movie was actually delayed because of Columbine. In retrospect, do you think that was the right call? A lot of critics thought that was unnecessary, thought it might have hurt the film a little bit.
Well, it certainly did hurt the film. to delay its release. I mean, I was of the opinion that Columbine should actually have hastened its release, because here was this tragic incident that was actually the subject of our film. Harvey and Bob Weinstein from Miramax felt the opposite. They felt that there was the potential for copycat violence, and I think that when somebody smart has an argument against yours, you've got to take their argument very seriously and consider it as if it were your own. And so I guess I'll give them the credit of having thought it through. I just happen to disagree with them. I continue to disagree with them. But the movie did get out, and it was seen by a lot of people, and people continue to watch it. And so I'm quite grateful for that.
Well, it got excellent reviews, though Esquire made the comment that it was the most controversial movie of the year, and I've been thinking about that. I'm not so sure it's as much controversial as it is thought-provoking. What do you think?
You know, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I guess I returned to my own notion when I had initially resisted making the movie, because I didn't write the script for O. It was sent to me and first conceptualized to me over the phone before I even read it. And I really did think that to set a Shakespearean tragedy in high school, and not to change it, you know, in some ludicrous way where Desdemona lives, or, you know, or Iago, you know, Othello lives, was provocative. I felt that it was provocative in a constructive way, and also thought-provoking. So I would say both, and I think that's good.
You did both write and direct The Eye of God. It's a movie set right here in Oklahoma. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. As a writer, did you make it hard for yourself as a director, having two stories that in the beginning are seemingly unrelated but then gradually come together? There's that wonderful frame for the film.
Yeah, you know, at the time, Eye of God was originally a play that my brother Mike saw. And my brother Mike is a producer of films. And he said, let's make this, I'll produce it, and you direct it, which is why the movie got made. But it was originally a play. And at the time I was about to write the play, I had read Faulkner's Light in August, which has a similar structure.
Yes.
And I saw this wonderful documentary called The Thin Blue Line that Earl Morris had made about this crime down in this travesty of justice in Vidor, Texas, in the Dallas area, where this guy was falsely accused of murder. And that also had a fractured structure. And so I started thinking about that, and I knew that the film or the play at the time was going to be about faith and notions of God. And I thought, well, since God exists in an eternity, then the notion of linear time really doesn't apply. Time is irrelevant. And so that the relationships between people, themes, incidents, and spirituality between incidents and people is more thematically related than temporally related. So I said, I'm going to throw out the notion of linear time, and I'm going to relate all these scenes in a way that's thematic and maybe, I don't know, circular or cubist rather than linear. And so that's what inspired the choice to do it that way.
Oh, it's fascinating. And you were just earning your directorial stripes with this film, and yet you were directing some veteran actors like Hal Holbrook and Mary Kay Place. Was that intimidating at all, giving suggestions? Did you ever go up and tap Hal on the shoulder and say, dial back a little, or anything like that?
Well, I don't think I ever told Hal to dial back a little.
No.
You know, because I'm an actor as well, I try to speak to actors the way, you know, that I would want a director to speak to me. And I think that even a first-time director can direct, in other words, help to nuance or texture a performance from a wonderful veteran actor. If there's politeness, respect, and clarity of thought involved. And so I have never, I've directed some notoriously or some infamously difficult actors, but I'm happy to say I've always had very good relationships with them. I think that people get those reputations, and veteran actors seem daunting, probably because directors haven't known how to speak to them.
Good point. We were talking before we actually started taping that another film that you wrote and directed, I find one of the most compelling films that I've ever seen, The Gray Zone. When did you first get the idea of telling this story?
Well, my mother and her parents are Holocaust, well, her parents were Holocaust refugees. My mother is. She's still, thankfully, wonderfully alive, my mother, Ruth Nelson. And I had set out initially to write some version of their story and spent about a year on that. And it just didn't work. Not because their story isn't compelling, but because it felt familiar. There are so many stories, and most of them actually more tragic than that of my family because we survived. About the Holocaust from a family point of view, that I didn't feel that what I was writing had anything to add. And I think that particularly with the Holocaust, what you mustn't do is dilute the power of other stories by adding another one unnecessarily. So I set that aside but continued to research the subject matter. And I found this essay by Primo Levi called The Gray Zone, in which he told the story of this group of Sonderkommandos who were Jews in the death camps forced to aid in the extermination of fellow Jews, who find this young girl who has survived a gassing. And they find her on the eve of a rebellion they're planning. And they have to choose between saving the one or the rebellion. And for a moment, it seems it really is going to be one or the other. And they struggle with the absurd and unfair morality of that. And that felt to me like a way, just telling that story, to examine something that I hadn't encountered in Holocaust narrative before, which was this moral choice when presented with the zero option. The zero option meaning for you to live, somebody else is going to have to die. And how do we deal with that? And so that allowed me the opportunity to write The Gray Zone, just coming up, discovering that essay really after probably 10,000 pages of research on the subject.
One of the things I admire most about the film is its uncompromising honesty. Many of the scenes, though necessary, are very hard to watch, and I can only imagine what it was like for you as the writer, as the director, re-envisioning those scenes, spending hours setting them up. What kind of toll does that take on you personally?
Well, there were some very, very difficult days. I'll certainly say that. It was a hard shoot. You know, but a lot of that had to do with just the pressures of the production pressures of building exact replicas of these killing machines, and that's what we did. We found the architectural plans for the area of Birkenau where the death camps were. There were the crematoria in the back of the camp, and then the barracks in the front of the camp. And we built the crematoria. We built a crematorium room that was 100% to scale and exactly what it was.
Had to be haunting.
And then we built the actual crematorium building at 80% to scale, based on the architectural plans. And we built the Sonderkommando barracks at 100% to scale, based on the architectural plans. And so the dichotomy of struggling so hard and against so many production pressures on a low-budget film to create something so gruesome was an irony I wouldn't want to repeat. At the same time, however, I felt so blessed to get to make that movie and have a company, this company in Los Angeles called New Image Millennium, headed by this man named Avi Lerner. But to have a company that was allowing me, giving me millions of dollars to pursue this uncompromising take on the death camps without a sentimental ending, had me feeling very lucky as well. And so there was something quite invigorating as strange as it is to admit.
And even though the ending's not sentimental, I was talking to you earlier, I found it beautifully written, very lyrical, and one of the most moving pieces of writing I'd ever heard. It's very hard, isn't it, to find the art in tragedy, the art in violence?
Yeah, but I'm an avid, constant reader, and particularly of novels, and great writers of novels, as well as many of the poets I've read, have guided me. And so, I have some really, really, really good influences. And I just try my best to approach what they've been able to do. Novels have been very influential. Faulkner, Cormac McCarthy, Flannery O'Connor, and then a lot of the poets I've read. I studied poetry at Quartz Mountain for 3 years when I was in high school. And just being exposed to great writing at an early age has helped me try to approach that sort of writing as an adult.
Does making a film like Gray Zone change you forever?
Well, I think that making Gray Zone, just because of the incredible challenges involved in doing a film of that scale on such a low budget, certainly changed me. Each film changes you. Really, what I learned most by doing Gray Zone was about production design. I didn't understand how important production design was before I met the production designer on Gray Zone, who really pushed me as a director to go to some real extremes in creating the crematoria. And I never would have done that had it not been for this British production designer whom I met in London and asked to come on and help us. And so on each film, and also in the writing of each film, you learn more and you just become better at what you do.
Your latest film is Leaves of Grass, also set in Oklahoma. Is Oklahoma a good setting? You've had 2 films set here now.
Well, and I have a third I'd like to do here about the Dust Bowl called Seasons of Dust, which I was almost going to make in 2005, but which fell apart. I love coming back to Oklahoma, at least in the subject matter for my films. I would really love to shoot here again. I unfortunately was not able to shoot Leaves of Grass here because tax incentives wooed us away to Louisiana. Yeah, I mean, the adage that you write what you know certainly remains true. And I love the state in which I was raised. I love coming back here. And I love writing characters from Oklahoma and inhabiting characters as an actor from Oklahoma as well. And so I do, when I'm writing and I get to write an Oklahoma character, have this enormous sense of relief. I just feel I'm home.
Leaves of Grass is the tale of 2 brothers, but more than that.
Leaves of Grass uses the metaphor of identical twins, both played by Edward Norton,
Great actor.
to explore what it means to try and live a healthy, happy life. And so this movie, like the others, does have a classical underpinning. And its real focus is, goes back to the Greek obsession with what it is to live a good life. And the central character in Leaves of Grass, who's one of the identical twins, is in pursuit of that, and his life just gets completely sideswiped by his twin brother. And because that happens, he learns that life is about balance and improvisation and finding your own philosophy and your own meter which will suit your individuality. And that's the real journey of Leaves of Grass, through the labyrinth of a classics department at Brown University and growing hydroponic pot in southeastern Oklahoma.
It's got a great cast. You mentioned Edward Norton. Tell us some of the other people that you...
Richard Dreyfuss is in the movie. Susan Sarandon, I'm in it. Two of my children and my wife are in it as well. Carrie Russell, Steve Earle, the singer-songwriter from Texas. A wonderful actor named Josh Peiss. Lucy DeVito, Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's daughter.
Yes.
It's a very exciting, thrilling cast.
Tim, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here today.
You bet, it was my pleasure to be here.
And thank all of you for joining us on Writing Out Loud.